Good evening, everybody from South Africa. Welcome to the short and concise and relatively quick webinar tonight. It won't take longer than maybe 20, 25 minutes. Welcome to the Network Migration Services webinar on Australia this evening. We did a New Zealand one last Wednesday because those of you who don't know, I am also licensed for New Zealand. And we had a few technical issues. In other words, I was talking to myself for the first 10 minutes. And nobody was hearing me because I wasn't actually on. So Desiree, welcome. Thank you for joining us as always. Desiree Lindeque is our operations manager. She's based in our Auckland office. And Ruan, thank you, mate, as always, for setting these up. Ruan is our marketing manager. Ladies, Des and or Ruan, can you let me know if you can hear me by a quick yes or whatever? And Des, you might just want to check your WhatsApp, please. Good. Thanks, Ron. Des, just check your WhatsApp if you can. I just wanted to ask you a specific question, which I've done on WhatsApp, and you can respond to me on that, just regarding tonight's webinar. Welcome to the webinar again. My name is Andrew Kerr. I'm the owner and director of Network Migration Services. I'm also a licensed advisor, as you can see on the first slide there, for Australia. That's the MARA registration number there. I've been MARA registered for many, many, many years. And also I'm registered for New Zealand, and that's the second number there on the top left of this first slide, which is my Immigration Advisor Authority registration number for New Zealand. Just a point, if you are going to immigrate, 99 times out of 100, you need to be a registered or licensed advisor. Funnily enough, for New Zealand, that's compulsory both onshore and offshore. But for Australia, it's only compulsory if you have offices onshore. Even though we have offices in New Zealand, which are very close to Australia, as you know, I am actually licensed. So just be a bit careful, especially if you're offshore in some of these countries where people are purporting to be advisors. If it's Australia, they don't necessarily need to be licensed, but use a non-licensed advisor at your peril, because if you're using a non-licensed advisor, of course, you have no protection if anything goes wrong with your application, because licensed advisors must, of course, be fully transparent from the initial consultation all the way through to you gaining that all-important residency. But everything is documented and everything is written down and everything is looked at and after. So if you have an issue with your advisor and not licensed, you have no recourse. So you stand to lose the money you've paid them. Thank you, as always, to some of our service providers. Some of them are on the first page there. Moving companies like Bidoffs. We're actually having a full seminar, our first one since COVID, at Bidoff centres all over the country. The first one is this Saturday. At 10 o'clock at Bidoffs in Johannesburg. Thanks, Des. I will do that. I don't necessarily need to put the camera on. That's up to you. But thank you, Des. But yeah, thank you so much to Bidoffs for hosting these face-to-face seminars. They start this Saturday. We're going to Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, and I think Port Elizabeth. Ruan can confirm that. Our animal travel company, which we've been heavily involved with for many years. The banks, of course, Flight Centres when it comes to flights and furniture. Pearson's, the English testing centres, Chris and his team. Point-to-Point Capital, Evan and his team. One thing that's not on there is our new partnership with Migrate Motors when it comes to selling vehicles, etc. So we are quite literally the one-stop shop, ladies and gentlemen. I've been an immigration advisor since 1993, which is 23 years. I joined Network Migration in 1993, and I bought the franchise in South Africa in 1996. And I'm very proud to say that we've successfully, in both countries, immigrated well over 17,000 families up until the last few years. Thank you, Rowan. Up until the last few years, most of that's been in South Africa. But with technology, especially in the last 5 years, Zoom, Skype, Teams, Google Meet, you can invite 55 people on a meeting if you want to, and they can be all over the world. So with the technology that's available today, we have clients everywhere, from Ireland, the UK, to China, to war-torn countries at the moment, and very sad for countries like Israel and, of course, Palestine and Russia and Ukraine. Clearly there's people wanting to immigrate from those countries at the moment, and with clients in the Philippines. we've got clients in probably 40 or 50 countries. So most of the dealings we have with immigration, both Department of Home Affairs in Australia and, of course, also in New Zealand, is electronic. So as long as we are available to chat to, no matter what time zone you're in the world, as long as you have an email address, a smartphone, hopefully, and or a laptop or a PC, we will always be able to service and deal with you no matter where you are. You'll see I'm also a member of MIA, which is the Migration Institute of Australia. It's not compulsory to be a member of MIA, but we do find it very beneficial when it comes to updates regarding Australia. So that's a little bit about me. The company's been going for a long, long time, and very proud to say we have well over a 99% success rate out of those 17,000 families that we have immigrated. Bottom line, guys, we don't take on people that we can't help and assist. This is your life we're talking about here, and we take that extremely seriously. Right, let's just move on to slide 2 about network. We've talked about that. I'm going to go through Australia, visa and points shortly. I'm not going to do New Zealand tonight. We do separate webinars on New Zealand. But if you do want information on New Zealand, please just drop me an email. Ruan, about 4 minutes ago, put my email address in there. It's andrew@networkmigration.com. Andrew@networkmigration.com. Relocation and partners, I'll talk about a little bit. And if you've got any questions and answers, please just type them into the chat room on the right-hand side of the screen I'm looking at anyway. And Desiree is quite capable of answering those questions. She's been with the company 8 years, and as you already know, she's our operations manager. She's an outstanding individual, and she immigrated to New Zealand plus minus a year ago with her family, Darby and the children. And I was very blessed to be able to see Desiree over the Christmas break, because myself and Rose, who's head of our relocation division, and my wife, we were lucky enough to travel to New Zealand during the Christmas break, and it was fantastic to see my colleagues and friends and family. I do love Australia and New Zealand. Right, I've talked about us. I don't need to really harp on about us. That's me a couple of years ago, of course, as you know, licensed advisor. Let's just jump straight in. I lived in Australia for 10 years. I mean, I've been in South Africa for, 30 years now, or just over. I lived in New Zealand for 20 odd years and Australia for 10. So if you add those up, you're guessing my age, or roughly what my age is. And I loved Australia. I really did. It's a progressive country. It's massive area-wise. Fantastic, different, diverse cities in Australia, from Darwin in the north to Perth in the west to Adelaide in the south. And, of course, cities like Canberra and Sydney and Melbourne. And, it's just a beautiful country. And when Rose and I travel to New Zealand, we always stop in Australia, either on the way over or on the way back, to see family and friends, and also just to explore, because Australia is a beautiful country. In saying that, it's become pretty difficult to get into Australia lately. I did do a very quick blog, which I've sent to Ruan, and he'll post. And that's one of the reasons we're going to invite Desiree in a minute, just to talk about what's happening with processing and processing times, because a lot of Australian applications post-COVID have been slow, extremely slow, and a lot of their selections have not been happening as and when they advertise they're happening. They did have a selection in December, which Desiree will talk about when I invite her in a minute. So I'm not going to go through the points per se, but I'm going to sort of just show you screenshots of them, so you can take screenshots yourself, or shots of them on the slides here. Please take a screenshot either on your PC, laptop, phone, whatever, and then email me, because all the information that I give you tonight and that I give you in consultations are free. You do not pay for our services until you decide to engage them. If you want to officially engage us, we will, of course, up front give you full-on quotes no matter what you want us to do, be it any type of visa. For example, skilled migrant. We're going to talk mainly about skilled migrant tonight, but students. I mean, the student industry in Australia is $1 billion industry. Lots of inquiries about students. Just remember, if you're going in as a student, you're paying international student rates. Family, relocating with your family members, either on a 491, which take a while because they're not a priority visa as far as Australia is concerned. That's if you've got a family member, either a mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter, uncle, aunt, niece or nephew, or first cousin, living in Australia as residents. But if they live in Sydney, Brisbane or Melbourne, they cannot sponsor you. So again, just contact me. Business visas, investor visas, business applications when it comes to what we call entrepreneurs, of course, business and innovation. So work visas, of course, the 482 visas. I'll ask Des just to explain a little bit about that. 482 is a work visa, which entitles you to get into Australia, and they had very, very strict pathways to residency from the 482, which they seem to have relaxed. So Australia is seeming to, want to encourage people maybe to come over on temporary work visas initially, and then give them a more positive pathway to residency, which was extremely difficult under the old rules and regulations. So I asked Des to touch on that when she comes on for a chat in a second. But work visas in Australia have to be sponsored by an employer, by the way. So it's called a subclass 482. Again, email me if you want information on a work visa for Australia, and Desiree and/or I will send you the information, or etc. So tonight we're going to be one thing that you might be going out with an Australian or living with an Australian, you might be married to an Australian, you might be a parent of an Australian resident, etc. So as I said, from a visitor's visa to permanent residency, in all types of visa categories, there's just not a visa that we can't assist you with. So please feel free to contact us on any type of visa you wish. Take a screenshot of this page. We're talking about skilled migrant categories tonight. Just a couple of points on this. Do be aware that your age for Australia on a skilled migrant application, the age limit is 45. So if you're just about to turn 45, or you already are 45, and you're looking at a skilled-based visa into Australia, with all due respect, you can forget it. It's not going to happen. You will not be able or eligible to be accepted. Points for qualifications, if you've got one, are on the right-hand side there at the top of the screen. Doctorate, bachelor's, diploma, or trade. In 99% of cases, well, maybe 95% of cases, you are going to need a qualification. And you might say to me, well, I don't have a qualification, but I've been in the business I'm doing for 14 years. Well, the only way that you will get away without a qualification into Australia is either on a work visa, potentially a 482, because sometimes they're not required, or you are a computer boffin, where you're assessed by the Australian Computer Society. They don't necessarily require you to have a qualification, but you don't get points if you've don't have the qualification, so you still might not make the points test. And also what we call Institute of Management and Leadership. So if you're a senior manager, CEO, for example, of pretty much a listed type of organisation or company, then you've got a very strong chance of getting in. Again, both subject to you getting positive assessments and being under 45 years old. At the time you're selected, by the way, not the time you inquire. So if you're turning 45 during the process and you haven't been selected, then you'll be ineligible. English language requirements there on the second, points for English. You might be sitting in England at the moment, Ireland, America, Canada. And you're saying, yeah, I don't have to do English. Well, you're quite right. You don't. You're exempt from it. However, if you don't sit the English test, you don't get the points. And you just might need those points, of course, in order to be eligible to qualify. So be careful there. I might be strongly suggesting you do the English test anyway. You can get points for your spouse having the qualification, but it must be on the same skills list as you. There are two main skills lists for Australia, the medium and long-term strategic skills list and the state and territory skilled occupations list. I will, of course, tell you when you email me if you're on any of those lists. And you get points for regional migration. It's under the new visa that came before COVID. It's called the 491. You get 15 bonus points for that. And if your spouse is prepared to sit the English test and get the minimum or moderate requirements for the English test, then you can claim 5 points for spousal English as well as spousal qualifications. But remember, the qualifications of your spouse must be on the same skills list as you. Over to the right there, you'll look at the points for work experience. Of course, the work experience must clearly be related to the qualification you're claiming. 3 out of 5 years, 5 out of 8 years, and 8 out of 10 years. That's what you can claim. And the work experience must be post-qualification. So I assessed a guy today, for example, who's a tradesman, but he only got his trade this year. Well, he's getting it in March. So even though he's been a metal fabricator or what Australia calls metal fabricator or boilermaker for the last 15 years, he gets no work experience because he only qualified now. So be careful of that. And by the way, if you don't qualify for Australia, just put in the emails you're sending me, well, listen, can you also assess me for New Zealand? Because if you don't qualify for Australia, you probably will get into New Zealand because New Zealand is based on you receiving an offer of employment, where Australia isn't under a skilled visa. And take a screenshot of this page as well. You get clearly, if you've qualified in Australia, you're going to get extra points. If you get sponsored by the state, I've already mentioned on a 491, or a family member, by the way, on a 491. A state sponsorship would be quicker than a family member. Family sponsorship will take, gosh, I'm guessing, but 6 to 8 years. You might as well go and live in New Zealand for 5 years, become a New Zealand citizen, then go live in Australia anyway. And then if you're sponsored by an eligible citizen, this is what I'm talking about, of course, 6 to 8 years, you get 15 bonus points. If you're sponsored by a state or territory, it's called a subclass 190, you get 5 points. If you don't need a sponsorship, it's called a subclass 189. That means your occupation and qualifications are on the main skills list, the medium and long-term strategic skills shorters list, and you have been selected when they select. In Australia, they've been mucking around a bit lately, but they're scheduled to select every 3 months. And yet they did select in December, and they went. Des will bring me up to speed on that when I bring her in, which is going to be in 2 minutes or so, Des. And then partner skills, of course, must be has relevant skills assessment in English and under 45. That's a total of 10. So that's 5 points for the skills assessments, 5 points for the English. If you're a single applicant, believe it or not, and by single I mean single, no dependents, no spouse, etc., you can claim 10 points. You can get points if your spouse is an Australian citizen, but frankly, if your spouse is an Australian citizen, you might as well do a spousal visa if, of course, you've lived together for 12 months. Don't need to be married, but you need to be a common law partnership living together for 12 months. And not an Australian citizen, but has competent English, if there's the 5 points. Rowan, we must get on to just tweaking these slides a bit. I know we're going to do it at the beginning of the year, and we've been extremely busy since we started back. So our relocation division is a free division. It's run by Rose Nightingale. I'm looking at her at the moment. She's cooking dinner. Rose is my wife and been head of relocations, gosh, 8-9 years now. And relocations is assistance with everything: flights, furniture, meeting at airports, accommodation, opening bank accounts, shifting funds, selling homes, selling cars. There's not anything that we actually can't assist you with when it comes to not only getting the visas, but the relocation side of the business as well. So while we're here, I am just going to invite in Desiree, just so we can have a little bit of a chat. We're going to be finished in 5 to 10 minutes, because if you're listening to me tonight, I strongly suggest you contact me, Andrew at networkmigration.com, because all the information I'm going to give you, as well as, of course, the pathways and the quotes, etc., are all free. So why not utilize them while they're free? So, Des, I'm just inviting you in now. So you should receive the invite in a second. And I just want to have an open discussion with you on what's happening in Australia at the moment. If you need me to scroll back to the pages, I will, just so you can perhaps have a look at those points pages again. Right, Miss Linda Q, there she's coming in now.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Des, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, and you?
Good. Thank you for getting up so early in New Zealand and talking to the people. There's 2 subjects I wanted you to touch on, Des. One was clearly the 482s, and we'll talk about that in a second, and what's changed in the work visa, the subclass 482, and also the selection in December, how you read it, what you think of it, and what type of people were selected in December on what type of scores, please.
Okay, so obviously Andrew mentioned that we're really excited that an invitation actually took place in December, because it had been quite a while before a previous invitation had been made. The last invitation was in May last year. So the invitations that were received, there was about 8,500 invitations that went out. Most of those were occupations in the health and education sector. So it was child center managers, teachers, early childhood teachers, secondary school teachers. So anyone in the teaching field, and then in the medical field. And those occupations were selected on 65 to 70 points. So we are seeing that they're still very much selecting in the areas of need. They didn't select engineers or IT professionals in this invitation round, which is also occupations which are on their priority list. So that was a bit strange, but I do think it's because we are getting towards the end of those invitations. So they are running out of invitations for this round. So for this year, for this financial year. So I think they're very much focusing on everything they need in order to get them through to the end of this financial year. And as everyone is aware, from July, those numbers reset and we get our new selection, our new invitation cap for the following financial year.
Cool. And do we know? I mean, according to me, the selection was supposed to be in January because they did it in December. Do we think that'll now be in March, or don't we know?
We don't know. Unfortunately, it is DHA. It means that even though selections have been meant to take place every 3 months, we're actually seeing it closer to 4 to 5 months. So my feeling is the last invitation round that took place in December, which was not last year, the year before, we had another selection on the 21st of April. So I do think that this might run the same way. They might try and push it out as close to June as possible and maybe do one big selection. We've seen that in the past, Andrew. So it is DHA. So it's very difficult to be able to advise people. So when I have clients, I always tell them, if you're not in the pool, you're not in. Rather let's get everything ready, put you in the pool, whether they have the selection or not, you're ready to be selected. The other thing you need to
Bottom line
consider
is you've got to be in it to win it.
Exactly. The other thing that you need to consider is if you're starting this process, skills assessing authorities in general have just been inundated with applications for the first time in years. We have AATSL that has taken 8 weeks since as long as I've worked with network migration services.
That's
They're
for
saying
teachers, by the way, for those of you who don't know what ARTSL is. And by the way, DHA stands for the Department of Home Affairs. Sorry, Des, carry on.
Not a problem. So AATSL for the first time in many, many years is saying that they're going to take longer to have these assessments completed. Engineers Australia, their assessing timeframes were 8 weeks. That's gone up to 15 weeks. VetAssess previously was 12 weeks to get a skills assessment. They're now taking up to 16 weeks. So just to keep in mind that all these skills assessing authorities are under a lot of pressure to get this information out and get the skills assessments out, but they're under a lot of pressure. So there are delays. And if you are wanting to start this process to get an EOI in before the next selection round, you need to start immediately.
Okay, Des, are we actually still recording? Because I've, my technical abilities. I think we are, aren't we? Rowan, you'll let me know on my. I can't because I can't see the chat room anymore because of what I've done. But that's my fault, nobody else's fault.
No, I can still see the chat room.
Okay, cool. Okay, and then secondly, Des, just on. I mean, one thing that I was quite excited about was the potential changes to the 482, or am I misreading those changes?
No, I don't think you are at all. We're all excited about those changes. So just for a bit of background for anyone who didn't know the previous settings for the 482, previously, if you were on the short-term skills list, you could only apply for 482 for up to 2 years. You then needed to leave Australia and you could renew your 482 for another 2 years, but you could only stay for that maximum period because you were on the short-term list, and that meant that you could never really change it to a residence. You could never convert it into residency, even though you worked in Australia for that time period. So what DHA have now come out with is they've said anyone on a 482 who has been in Australia for 2 years, irrelevant of the skills list that you're on, you will now be able to renew while you're on shore. So that means everyone can get the full 4 years. And you can apply for permanent residency, which is your subclass 186 under the transition stream after 2 years of working in Australia for your employer. So that's really fantastic because it means that people who didn't previously have a pathway to residency now do have a pathway to residency once you've worked for your employer, provided it is in an ANZCO occupation. If you've worked for that employer for 2 years, you are now able to apply for residency. The other exciting change that they made is we previously had a lot of applicants that were over the age of 45, and we would have to tell them that they would have to work at a high salary income, which is currently 167,500 per annum, for 3 years before they could apply for an age exemption to apply for residency. That criteria has now moved down to 2 years. So anyone that is over the age of 45 can apply for an age exemption, provided that they're earning at the high salary benchmark for at least 2 years.
And that is automatic, Des? If they can prove they've earned that for 24 months, they will get an age exemption?
So you'd have to do the application with the 186, and you're going to put in a motivation to say you are applying for an age exemption based on meeting the criteria. DHA will obviously grant that age exemption as part of your 186 visa application because you have met the criteria. But keeping in mind that this application is an application as an exception to policy, the policy clearly states you have to be under the age of 45. We are making an age exemption to DHA when you do the application to say you've met the criteria, this is what you have to bring to the table, and they'll then grant that.
Cool. Desiree, as always, thank you so much for your time this morning in New Zealand, and have a fantastic day. We'll chat in about 12 hours as our normal meeting for Thursday morning. Looking forward to that. And thank you for the input, as always. I'm going to close now, guys. If you have any questions or queries, you can email Desiree as well as myself. Our emails are our first names, Desiree@networkmigration.com, Andrew@networkmigration.com. We had potentially 100 people listening to us tonight, but I think with load shedding, the numbers were down. So you will be receiving a recording. Everybody that booked tonight will be receiving a recording of this particular webinar. Ruan will send that out tomorrow. But guys, if you do have any questions, as I said, please contact us. It's what we're here for. Des, thanks so much for this evening and this morning on your time. I will looking forward to chatting to you morning my time, evening your time. Have a fantastic day, and thank you to everybody that joined us tonight. And thank you for Ruan, as always, for setting it up. Ciao, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Ciao. Bye.